Twisters is directed by Lee Isaac Chung, which is a massive departure from his last movie, Minari, and stars Daisy Edgar-Jones and Glenn Powell. This is a standalone sequel to the first movie, where you find Daisy Edgar-Jones as Kate Cooper, a young woman who, after a very traumatizing incident early on in the movie involving a tornado, returns to the field in order to find out how to tame one and to be able to fix things in a way that could help people and save lives. And in the process, she runs into Tyler Owens, played by Glenn Powell, who calls himself a tornado wrangler and is just the most insane guy when it comes to trying to stop one. When it comes to tornadoes, that was something that I was very fascinated with when I was growing up. Tornadoes and volcanoes, two things that I could constantly talk about, and every single time there was any representation of that or anything that I could get my hands on in terms of reading material, I would jump on it. And it also makes the first Twister one of my favorite movies as a kid. I absolutely loved watching that movie, and I watched it multiple times. I used to love what Bill Paxton and Helen Hunt were doing in that, even Philip Seymour Hoffman. Two of them are no longer with us, may they rest in peace. And I had such a blast with that movie, and it used to be such a great time capsule event to watch that the idea of making another one was almost too much to think about, because, you know, there is something about the original Twister that is just so perfectly suspended in that time. And it works so well in that moment that you often think about it and you go, there's no way you can try and replicate this formula. However, it could work when you get two extremely charismatic actors like Daisy Edgar-Jones and Glenn Powell. And thanks to that, Twisters turns out to be a lot of fun. I had an absolute blast with this movie. I would say this is the best 90s movie to come out right now, because it really is another movie that belongs in that same time capsule. It really feels like it's right in that same space as the first movie, especially in the way it's shot and made, written even. There's so much they have in common, these two movies, and I absolutely adore them for those reasons. And I think a lot of that also has to do with how Lee Isaac Chung directs this movie. There is something just so old school about the entire effort, though, especially when it comes to how the characters are handled and, you know, the way sequences are directed. In fact, giving them a lot of depth in it, surprisingly to a point that I did not expect. There are moments, especially with Kate and with Tyler, where you're getting to know them a little bit more, and it's interesting how much the movie lets those emotional sides really come into play. It makes you really care about them, and when eventually they're heading into incredibly dangerous situations with tornadoes and trying to tame them or wrangle them, you know, it becomes this thing where it's like trying to, you know, make sure that they get out of it alive, and you wanting them to get out of it alive and live to tell the tale. And both of them are extraordinary in the movie. The level of charisma that is between these two is quite incredible. I think with the performances that she's done over the last few years, from stuff like Normal People to now, I think Edgar-Jones is a phenomenal actress, and I loved her in this movie too. Glenn Powell is one of the most charismatic people that is in the industry right now. I talked about this a bit with Hitman, and I'm talking about it over here too. He's fantastic as Tyler Owens. They don't start off immediately working with each other. In fact, there's distance because Kate is wanting to do things from a more scientific and professional manner, and then you have Tyler and his crew who are in it to just, you know, have the time of their lives and try to make that, you know, be the most viral thing you've ever seen. And at the same time, both of them have similar interests in, you know, the fact that you want to do something about tornadoes, especially with this once-in-a-generation event happening in Oklahoma right now, where there are tons of tornadoes going on. And the movie ends up also being a commentary on that as well, especially with how, you know, things have changed in terms of the climate, in terms of how, you know, global warming has affected things and how much it's causing damage and destruction, and people in neighborhoods that are being consistently affected by these tornadoes. It actually makes for a really touching and a really well-made story. The actual tornado sequences are pretty great. I mean, that's not something that's going to surprise you, but they're also filmed really well. They made the decision to shoot this in 35mm, and I think it works for the best because something about the graininess of the image and the way some things really pop on screen, that format is best suited for this. And the decision to do this, along with the director of photography over here, Dan Mindel, who worked on a lot of blockbusters, including the recent Star Wars movies and some of them, he's done an incredible job of really capturing that scale and sense of the tornadoes on screen. I really appreciated the craft that they brought to it. Another very praiseworthy thing, however, is the music. This is a country music album through and through, and I honestly really want to buy it because I loved all the songs in this movie. I was on my way to the theater listening to the songs. On the way out, I was listening to the songs for a bit. I love it. It's great. Great assortment of music. I almost wish there was more country music, but whatever. Like I said, this movie is very 90s in a lot of ways. And when I say that, I mean it is very much soaked within that time. But it also means that it sometimes comes with a little 90s cheesiness. And that's fine. Although that does mean that sometimes you also get dialogue that's not particularly going to win any awards. Like there are some really cheesy lines and very, how do I put this? Lines that very much belong in a fun, over-the-top 90s movie. That's something that I absolutely wanted from this, but if that's going to be an issue for you, that is something that's in here, and it is something that you're going to have to sort of like get with. But like I said, if you're somebody who is very much going for the 90s vibes that this movie is going to offer, then I don't see you having, any kind of a bad time with Twisters. I think you're going to have a great time with it. It does take a while to get going though. There are some things that definitely need a little while to pick up, and the movie does have some pacing issues that are sprinkled throughout it. There are some sequences which I do think drag a little bit more than they need to. There's also some stuff going on in terms of a subplot that I wasn't really interested in as much. It is this other thing which involves, an antagonist side. Not that particularly interesting. In fact, the movie also kind of leaves it as an afterthought after a while because it just doesn't really go anywhere else. So if you remove a couple of those things, the movie might be a bit stronger, but overall, I was very happy with Twisters. And it's a movie that I look forward to revisiting as soon as possible, and it's a movie that I will gladly watch again, along with that first movie over and over. And I'm so glad it just exists. I'm glad it worked out as well as it did. It honors what that first movie did nicely, creating its own story over here as well. It has some really great things to root for, and overall, I'm just very satisfied with the final movie. And it's just a really fun summer blockbuster that works on the levels that it's supposed to. I'm gonna give Twisters an 8.5 out of 10. I can honestly say that I'm giving it that rating, but at the same time, when I walked out of the movie, I was like bouncing off the damn walls when it came to talking about it. I swear, my friends will attest to this. I was like literally, thank you, God, thank you. It's just the perfect amount of 90s nostalgia in a movie. So in that way, it's great, and I'm just happy. Overall, I'm just happy. Guys, thank you very much for watching, and look forward to more videos very soon. As always, if you like this, please do subscribe. And remember, you don't face your fears, you ride them.